Call the meeting to order, and I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of March 28th, 2023.
I'll motion.
Thank you,
Second.
Okay, Kathy, and thank you. I think before we, I'm sorry, all in favor, all in favor?
Oh, aye.
Any abstentions or nays? Thank you. I think that before we go into public comment, I want to give the floor over to Council Member Bagley to say a few words.
Yeah, thanks, Will. And I wanted to come in today in light of it being the last meeting for this task force and thank everybody for all the hard work they've put in. It's been a lot of meetings, and I know with the slides and stuff, there's been a lot of research kind of behind the scenes that's been going on as you all gather data to bring to this. I think two things that have been accomplished, regardless of anything else going forward, is you've highlighted the need in the community in a lot of ways that I don't think that kind of flew under the radar, or areas that maybe weren't currently being addressed. And it's going to give the city and yourselves as representatives of nonprofits, a framework to work with going forward. I'm particularly excited about, I think you guys talked about grant applications and kind of streamlining that, and making sure that all the different agencies were working together, and if the city could step in anywhere and help fill in any of those gaps, that would be helpful. I think what we've seen is all of the challenges are severe. There's no Band-Aid solutions. There's no quick solutions, but hopefully we can have a few solutions that will get the ball rolling in the right direction. But mostly I just want to thank you all for all the hard work, and I think this is probably going to be one of the more valuable things that I was able to do on the council, and I didn't actually have to do that much work, so that's always great. But I'll watch the rest of the meeting, but thanks again.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I thought that we would put the public comment up front simply because those in the public that have been watching and might want to make comment before we start the discussion part of the conversation, and then maybe towards the end we'll come back and ask for additional public comments if we have time. But is there anybody that
There's nobody on.
There's nobody up there right now. Okay, then we'll move into public comment. And I think what obviously today being the last meeting, that we have to come up with a set of recommendations for the city council to consider. And as I looked at what Abby had put together back in to present for the city council back at the end of the year, I thought that certainly was a good starting place, unless others of you have other thoughts. But Abby, I thought you did a really good job of putting that together, and it really sets a good guideline for us to have a conversation. With that said, I will open it up for discussion.
So I think, Will, at the last meeting, we just kind of talked about, I sent that slideshow back out so people could look at it, but that we would kind of come up with like a top 10 list. So the idea kind of synthesize that kind of overwhelming slideshow with all the needs, and have anybody pick anything, we could talk about it. And I actually added a slide so that we could use it. So if we end up presenting to city council or something after at the end of this, it would kind of be the first slide with like the final, our top 10 list, if we want to call it that. So I think maybe if people have ideas what should go on that, there's a lot of things on the slideshow, so it's just kind of pulling. We had huge ideas that we learned with legal and other things probably can't be done. So really trying to think of the high impact, low cost, what could we, are tangible ideas. And some of them might be, like Andrew just said, the idea that one of our recommendations is talking about streamlining grants that target the areas of need that we defined. That could be one of our ideas, is just that, so it's a kind of procedure or policy change, not necessarily, which could be free, right? So just those kind of ideas. So I don't know if we want to put those ideas out, and then I can do it after the fact, it'll go in the minutes, but put it in that slide kind of after, if there are ideas that people had.
I don't know
Well, I'm sorry.
if it would be useful, I mean, our main bullets were transportation, mental health, workforce shortage, childcare, housing, and substance misuse. Those are the main bullets. And then we go down, we have slides for each one, and we have a potential solution. I don't know if it would be useful to go through those potential solutions for each one and pick out the ones that we like the best.
Yeah, I mean, I think if people, kind of, if you have something, I think it's worth putting out and having a discussion about, or something, I don't know. Just wearing that hat again of low cost, high impact.
Right.
The one thing that comes to mind for me is that there are almost two categories of things happening here. On the one hand, there are things like, for example, mental health, transportation, maybe childcare, substance misuse that we can have an impact in. And then there are the bigger kinds of things like workforce shortage and housing, which are really big systemic kinds of issues that we're not going to be able to resolve through funding, except for, I might say, for housing, if we wanted to set aside some money for kind of the educational piece, because I believe there's something there to that in educating the public about zoning and the importance of building really deeply affordable housing for our vulnerable populations. But beyond that, I don't see us having, at least through this funding, having significant impact in that area. So for me, I would rather focus on things like transportation and mental health and childcare, where I think those are more immediate and local, and we could probably have some sort of an impact. And then I was also looking at things that had been recommended that I don't think made it onto the slides. Things like somebody, I forget who mentioned the library mobile van, and bringing those to the communities, the summer camps, subsidizing those or scholarshiping those. And then there was the Community Resource Network website idea, which I think
That was
those
on the slide.
Yeah.
That was.
Yep.
So I just so you know, I can't share it obviously, but so I just did a slide at the beginning, so it's the same as our slideshow, so I can share it with everybody when we do it, but that we could put things, and I did put that, Will, because I know that on our last slide of recommendations, and then Andrew had mentioned it as well, the Community Resource Network, like possibly providing funding to make their website user-friendly, because all the nonprofits are there, and wouldn't it be great if you could type in a search bar for whatever, and all these things popped up.
Right.
So putting that as a recommendation, I did put that. I also put the working with the Recreation Department to help provide scholarships to summer programs for kids, teens, and we also talked about expanding programs for seniors, because I know that when Kim was here, that was a big thing that came out of some of the work she's doing.
Yes.
So those two I had put on there, and so then like one idea that I know we had talked about, and is obviously my lens is very kid focused, was just partnering. We had talked about creating like a position that partners the schools with the rec departments and community resources, like someone to coordinate all that, so that kids are getting those experiences. But then if there are other thoughts, I'm happy to,
Well, the reason I remembered that was on there was because when I was going through, it seemed like one of the only low,
Right.
low
Well,
dollar,
that's,
higher
so it is
impact
true, because we
things.
can, when we talk about it, but it's like, what are the action items, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yes. Because I think with transportation, we found that to be a huge issue, and then when we dug into it, it was like, well, how do we, I don't know. We had potential solutions being scholarships for drivers, using like the existing fleet of vehicles in the city, job training, supporting marketing campaigns to get people to drive. So those are some of the things.
Are all the coast buses, are those all require a CDL to drive? They do.
Yeah.
And there are no smaller vans and stuff that they could transport people in?
I don't think with Coast, but I don't know.
I think so.
They have the paratransit vans.
Right,
But that's-
right.
Because Because at least what we found, and look, because we were looking for a CDL driver for our fresh food bus, and it's super challenging, and the length of
Yes.
time it takes to get one is like 6 months, and it's,
Yeah.
relatively expensive. So I think either, and I'm sure the school bus companies and stuff are looking for people as well.
Yeah.
And so it seems like the scholarship idea or time, we've got to figure out how to give people enough time to go get it, or buying some smaller vehicles that would allow you to do it without the CDL.
without the
That
CDL.
would probably be
Right.
the thing that you could marry up maybe retirees who are interested in doing
know.
that with the purchase. And that is potentially like a longer term solution, because there's no guarantee that somebody you get a CDL, scholarship, a CDL for, will come and work for Coast.
Right, totally.
So if we eliminate those three, that leaves us with mental health, childcare, and substance misuse.
I don't think you need to eliminate it. I think you could put in to buy, the smaller, the 15-passenger vans aren't necessarily that expensive, and you could probably get, relative to the amount of money available, you could probably get a few of those. And
I think with the CDL scholarship, though, if we were to put money into it, have to be very clear that they would be getting it for the purpose of being a Coast driver.
Right.
So, that, just like if we do tuition reimbursement for any of our staff, the commitment is you're
Right.
staying employed with us for a
for
period
how
of
long?
time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
For
how
us, we
long
do
you
it for 2
enforce
years.
Yeah, 2 years.
I mean, the idea of having like a fleet, even if it's like 3 vans or something that could be used somehow for like rec department, Portsmouth Housing Authority, like
Moving seniors.
city. But I know that when we talk to Karen about it too, then there's like the maintenance of it and the licensing and all the different pieces to it legal. So
And where
I don't
they're
know.
going to
I mean, we
keep
could-
them and who's going to maintain them.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea is great, right? It's
I
necessary.
think that the transportation piece is something that probably requires further conversation with Coast at the table, with the city, and with Great Bay Community College, or maybe even the high school around getting people to do CDL. I don't know if the high school can do that, but I know certainly the community college can. And so that, I don't think it should be taken off the table, because it's such an important connecting piece for a lot of these things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good idea, and just to show that we really think it is important. I mean, it's
Well,
threaded throughout
and
everything.
I think, you had put in your slideshow too about continuing the conversation, and maybe a recommendation is what that could look like. That this group of people can't come up with the larger solutions to some of these pressing challenges, but could there be a transportation think tank that happens?
Right, that actually knows the answers to these questions.
It's the right people at the table to
Yep.
say, what are, with city folks to say, what are we going to do to
The other issue is gas. So at least the families we work with, they need to have gas for their cars to, visit their kids or get them to programs or whatever it is. And I see that as more of a low-hanging fruit. I mean, maybe it could be
Yeah.
where the city offers housing vouchers. What about gas vouchers?
Yeah.
They would have to, we could make it a pretty minimal qualification to get it.
Yeah.
But that's an ongoing issue for us, at least.
And that came up too, didn't it, with like an Uber voucher or a Lyft voucher, like that
Something like
idea
that,
of
yeah.
using that,
Yeah.
since that is currently how people are. Because
That is-
we talked taxis for a while, and then we found out there's one taxi medallion in the whole city, so gas. and-
I have a question, Councilor Andrew. Sure. Does the city welfare offer something like that? Do you know?
We'd have to ask Ellen Tully.
Yeah.
I know they have a pretty broad selection of offerings, but your recommendations to council could be something like, we've identified transportation as a big need. We don't see a low cost, high impact, but we might suggest, that you appropriate city staff to investigate this further and see if there's a solution.
Yep.
One of our ideas was maybe some small passenger vans, because CDL drivers are very hard to get. And I think I recall when Coast was here, they said that their drivers keep leaving for, say, like Amazon or Walmart.
Right.
'Cause
Yes.
They just pay higher.
They pay higher, yeah.
So I think don't be, if you have big ideas, don't be afraid to present them.
Yep.
Just present them as a, we think the city should devote some staff resources into looking into this.
Okay.
Thank you.
We should pay Amazon to deliver children.
There's really fancy new vans too. Those great.
The problem
gray
is that they
ones.
leave stuff at the wrong
You don't
houses.
want to leave the children at the wrong place.
We left you your package. Oh, that's not my house.
And you can't
That's not my
return
child.
it.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's at the wrong place. I found that out. Got a baby changing table delivered to my house one time. I don't have any babies.
That's not a problem.
Okay, what else?
So on the transportation, we would recommend either the low-hanging fruit of Uber and Lyft vouchers or gas cards.
Yep.
Or the longer-term potential solution of like a fleet of smaller passenger vans that wouldn't require CDLs.
Right, or like I kind of put Kathy, your idea of like creating a transportation think tank idea for people who actually do that and know what they're talking about.
I think it's still worthy of us or the city pursuing the CDL idea with the community college because long term, I mean, that's something that's just needed in the workforce. You know,
Yeah.
whether it's related to city
Childcare,
city
too.
needs or
Getting,
Right.
getting childcare employees, getting
Yep.
students to go to some of the community colleges to
Yep.
become, because there's such a shortage.
yeah.
And the high school does have the automotive
Yeah.
program there. They could potentially have students interested in
Right.
pursuing a CDL.
Yes.
But I thought they don't do driver's ed through high school anymore because
No,
of
they
the
don't.
insurance.
Which is so
I
sad.
don't know how they're going to bring the big rig to high school.
Right.
Yeah.
You know how that's going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Seems
Yeah,
like
you
a
have to be
insurance-
18
Right, it's
to
an insurance
apply for
nightmare.
it.
Right.
So anyway, so it's still worthy of a conversation.
Very worried.
As child care education, and Great Bay Community College has an excellent program in child care, and I think they're having problems filling it. So, but a little scholarshiping always can help drive young people in that direction.
I do think it's important to include something about how, in the course of looking at all of these issues, we have identified that there's organizations doing some of this work, but trying to figure out the solution of the city not wanting to become a grant maker.
Right.
What does that look like? And are there opportunities to partner with the Foundation for Seacoast Health or another grant maker that, around some of these needs of the community? Because to me, that when you think of smaller dollar, higher impact, it's supporting some of the work that's being done to address these topics.
So maybe that is, again, a question to put forward. How can the city more efficiently partner with the nonprofits that already exist? You know what I mean? Because that is, I think, the one thing we discovered. We're like, all these ideas, and they're like, oh, that exists, that exists. But then
Right.
our genius idea of the grant idea didn't really work, so.
I know, it's so hard though, because I feel like even that only does a little small piece. Like you look right now, there's been so many grants focused on mental health because it's such a big issue impacting everybody. And depending on the funders, they kind of go in different directions on how, and it's really not looking at a larger
Right.
way to address it. But I do think it's important that this be some sort of recommendation that to support the work that's already being done to address all of these.
The other thing is to think about putting in, as Kim McNamara asked us to put in a recommendation towards, and I don't know how we want to do that, but talking about the, totally blanking on what it's called, the needs study that she's doing. And how we put that in there to say we really think it's important, because everything she's finding is what we're talking about.
Yeah, so
That's considered.
my
Maybe just say
recommendation on that piece would be, if everybody agrees, that we want to support the Department of Health's recommendation to do a set aside of $3 million, which is what she's requesting, based to be used based on the outcomes of the health assessment, community health assessment. And I think we're all in agreement that a lot of what will come out of that are things that we've already discussed and talked about, whether it's related to mental health or transportation or daycare and so forth. So
I'm still not clear, though, how that would be used to address all of these things.
Well, I think it's, in part, it will help to address all these things. Once, I think once the assessment is done, that what will happen is that then there'll be, just like we are, there'll probably be recommended solutions. There'll be more discussion on it, and somebody will have to make a decision, whether it's the city council, on how to spend these funds plus additional funds that may come down the road. But I think it's important for us to at least put on the record that that is an important element in all of this public health assessment, of community health assessment. And if it aligns very well with what we're proposing, then I don't see why we should go in a different direction.
I'm not disagreeing the need to support this piece. I'm just getting caught up still in I feel like the outcomes from that, or you're going to be faced with the same things that this committee is faced with in how do you utilize the money?
And how do you determine how to give it out?
Exactly.
So it's still, is there a grant-making process?
Right.
Is there
It still
something-
seems
Yeah.
like there needs to be something that helps to.
Right, because even if you get, I mean, it's the same thing, if you get the pot of $3 million and now we all want it, how do we get it? And we're saying, yes, you all deserve it, but what's that process going to look like? Because I think even going forward, we got really hung up on when she showed us the spreadsheet of different organizations that had kind of requested, and it was like, well, how'd they do that? And it was like, well, I reached out, so it's there has to be some kind of process
Yeah.
that like the whole community knows about, that
Yeah.
Exactly.
if you fit in this category, you can apply something. I don't know.
But I think that's beyond the scope of this.
Yeah, no, agreed.
this
Agreed.
Right,
task
I do
force.
like your idea
Agreed.
about working with Foundation for Seacoast Health, though, because they're undergoing their strategic process right now.
And they are totally a grant-making
Right.
organization now.
Right,
So
right.
set
They're
up
not
for
a-
that.
Yeah, they're not a landlord.
So then Portsmouth could take our recommendations and Kim's recommendations and come up with a strategic plan of what they're going to support. And then if they could funnel the money through an agency like that that does grant giving, then it would be strategically placed money.
Yeah, I guess I would just want it presented in that, we clearly support the work of the Public Health Department and recognize that funding needs to go towards addressing the outcomes that are
Right, the health. Yeah.
the health outcomes. But should there be some sort of recommendation about, creating some sort of system for?
Has anyone talked to the Foundation for Seacoast Health and see if they would be interested in doing something like that? Okay.
No, I-
'Cause
I
mean,
think
I know
that's
they have
beyond
their
our
own
purview.
pot of
Right, it's out of our
funds.
purview.
Yeah,
It's really the
that's-
city's decision.
Yeah, that's the city's decision.
But the city has decided that they don't want to do grant making. I came late to this, so I
Yeah.
want to understand what the parameters are.
Well, it was just kind of like when we talked about some of the kind of grant ideas, because you had come up with the Seacoast Women's Health and
Seacoast Women's Giving
Circle, and they have a mental health piece, and so we were like, what if we used you say you gave it to them, the issue being with grants, right, that there's like the tracking process of where did the money go and who used it, and so who's in charge, kind of was the issue.
Right, particularly for
city
the
does
ARPA
do
funds,
grants
There's
through-
a lot of.
Right, ARPA,
yeah.
there's the follow-up of did it actually go
Right.
to what
Right.
was
Well, then it's just a
qualified
matter
for.
of requiring reporting, right?
Right, it's
The
just,
city doesn't really do grants,
Right,
though.
exactly.
No, they give funding.
Through the welfare office.
Yeah.
I mean, CDBG.
Right.
CDBG, but that's federal funds. That's not the city funds. But the city funds that come through the welfare department, there's not the same grant-making piece in terms of reporting out and.
so when you say like the Seacoast Health Network, like using that, then they could be the people in charge of following the grant type of thing?
The Foundation for Seacoast Health.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would want to just recommend to the city that there be some sort of further, as Andrew was saying,
Yeah,
some sort of
process,
further
discussion, yeah.
looking at what that process could look like, because,
Right, 'cause
Okay.
They don't deal with federal grants.
Okay.
right,
So that's not necessarily, they don't have the experience that some of us do having federal grants.
Right.
Or just a number of things you have to report.
Yeah.
Well, and
Okay.
it's also, so it would be suggesting that they be the fiscal agent, for instance?
Right.
Because I don't know if that can happen with city, state funds and private foundation funds.
We're looking at you, Ann.
They are a private foundation, and I think to Janet's point, they don't do
They
federal.
are a private foundation.
Yeah.
They don't do federal grants.
Right.
And so this money would need to be tracked like a federal grant and
Right.
reported back on like a federal grant.
Yeah,
Well,
it's federal
yeah,
money.
'cause it's federal
ARPA money.
make a suggestion?
Yes, please.
But that would be different then.
So what I think you might want to recommend to the council is that you've seen the health presentation from Kim McNamara. She has some substantial requests for money, and just make sure the council is kind of aware that this will be coming down the line, because I think it's, with the ARPA monies, there's all sorts of strings attached. So going out and doing grants with it is probably not feasible. But you might bring awareness to the council that the health department's been doing this study, and that there's probably going to be some asks at some point in the future, and then just kind of, and, you know, say if you support it or not, or, you know, you'd like to see the city follow up on some of those asks if possible, kind of thing. But I wouldn't try and figure out the pathways for the monies, because that's enormously complex. Like last night, we accepted a grant from CGGB for over $500,000, but I have no idea where that money goes. I know it gets used to improve the community, but I just know we accept the money and then somehow it gets dispersed.
Right.
Right?
That one.
Other thoughts?
Are we clear if the $3 million that they're thinking they might need is the total pot now, or what the total pot now is?
Don't know.
For the health for the health
I
assessment?
know there's the health
Just like money
assessment
left.
is saying that they are going to probably have proposals around $3 million, right?
Yep.
And then I've heard different things in this meeting about, or these meetings about whether the total pot is 5 million, 3 million.
When we started
some-
these meetings, it was a little over 5 million. I don't know if the city's made any decisions along the way, because it wasn't that they were waiting on all sorts of recommendations.
It's
There were some
rolling
that they
kinda.
were
Yeah.
rolling
And it was
on,
all kinds
so-
of things, water,
and
sewer,
there's other
infrastructure.
groups that were making recommendations, so it's not clear.
Yeah, all kinds of other.
I thought it was
things.
about like 2 million left. That's what I was understood.
Yeah, I don't know.
But in our last discussions.
2
I
million
don't know.
left after the 3
No,
million?
2
or
million
2
as far
million?
as what this group can
Oh.
recommend.
So we can't even recommend her 3 million.
But I don't know.
No, I thought it was 5.4.
It was 5.4
No,
at the
but the-
beginning.
In the beginning, it was.
I didn't think that money had left anybody's wallet at
We
this
don't
point.
know.
Oh, I have a feeling it has.
And that
You
3
think so?
million was.
Well, we started meeting last July, which was like a year ago, and
Right.
lots of other groups have met. So
you have more
I know,
information?
Andrew. Yeah, it's not that
We
much.
should just sit at the table.
And this
stay at the
is,
table.
you know, more the city manager's expertise, but I'll fill in what I know. There was about 5.4 million when this group was formed. The ARPA funds come with restrictions, but the restrictions are not such that the city couldn't find
Right.
a way to spend 50 million of that 5.4. So there's not going to be any money left over. There's not going to be, there's no like allotments to different groups. It's just, let's look at all the potentials to spend money and then pick the best $5.4 million worth of ways to spend it, whether it's this group, whether it's the, I think there's an arts group. And then there's also, you know, the fire department, the police department, the schools. There's, well, I think the schools have separate money, but there's lots of competing interests for this money. So I wouldn't worry so much about how much is there or not there. I would just say these are
Right.
what we think
Ideas.
would be great ideas, and then leave it up to the council to decide which.
Yeah, that makes
Obviously,
sense.
I'll probably advocate for your ideas more so than other task force, but I think there'll be other counselors that might advocate for the task force that they've put together.
Are the other task forces kind of at the same place we are in terms of discussions, or do you know any of that? Or?
I believe they were looking for around 400,000, but I have no idea. That was like a year ago, so I don't know where that particular one is.
And what about a level of specificity around the recommendations?
The more specific you make the recommendations, the easier it is for a council to approve it.
Right.
You know, if you say that we really think you should put $25,000 towards scholarships for summer camps for the next 2 years, that's easy for a group of 9 to say, yeah, that's a good idea, we'll
Right.
approve it, versus grand ideas. So I guess the way I would see it is you bring kind of the grand ideas to raise awareness, and then, like with the transportation piece, you know, encourage the city to work with Coast and others to see if there's ways we can address these things we've identified. But then also, you know, line items of, you know, these are some things that we've identified Like, I don't know if we can do gas cards, but I don't think there's anything wrong with asking for them.
Yep.
And, maybe we can't do gas cards, but we could do taxi, Uber, Lyft for vouchers. That's all, you'll recommend it. The council will say, yeah, that's a good idea. And then the city will look at it, city being the employees, and say, yeah, no, as a city, we just can't do that. That's not in our purview. Or they'll say, yeah, of course we can do that. And, the council's allocated X amount of dollars towards it, and then we'll do it. But I would say if you have discrete asks and you attach like a number to it, it's easier for us as a council to take action on something.
So do we,
I know that's not an easy thing to do. I'm just,
The numbers is not
It's
easy.
so late in the process. I
Yeah.
mean, we never talk numbers specifically.
right, but we can do that.
Oh, we can do that. I don't know if we can do that here today. I mean,
Well,
throwing
if-
numbers at things.
If we go through the other two, or the other one that we haven't really talked about is SUD, we have vouchers, small vans, scholarships to community
Yep.
college for transportation, scholarships for community colleges for childcare. We can put a price tag on those.
It seems like what we might want to do is, in thinking about where we're going to present to them, is that, we've identified all of these things. These are the handful of things that we identified could be small dollar, high impact. But the biggest takeaway from this group meeting and continuing to meet is these larger issues facing the community that the city needs to continue to work with the local organizations and nonprofits to
Yeah.
figure out how to address the bigger picture, because
Right,
where we don't have a dollar amount and there may be
Right.
no dollar amount,
Right.
there could be.
and what we could do is, or you could present it to the council, and the council could vote then for the city to give a report back.
Yep.
So say, just to go back to the gas card / taxi vouchers, which I don't know if that's a viable idea or not, but I do like the concept and I think it would fill a need. The council could say, yes, we want to support this, and then, we hand it back to the city and they come back and say, okay, this is what you can do and this is what we'd recommend for for funding,
Yep.
let's say. So, the one that did have numbers attached to it, and I don't know if they're out-of-date numbers, so they're no longer relevant, but I think the library van there was like two versions. There was like a $50,000 version and then a $250,000 version versus, and obviously that's a massive delta, so one was like the really tiny van and then the other was probably, like more of a fancy pop-out van. But I'm kind of biased towards that one because I really like books.
Do we want to, for these vouchers, do we want to specify who could use, or what the purpose of using the voucher would be? To go to mental health appointments, after-school programs? What are some of the things that we were intending for these vouchers?
I think that'd be very helpful.
yep.
Because that way, if you say vouchers, we don't really know necessarily, but you say specifically for mental health appointments, childcare, whatever that list is.
Yeah.
Which could be jobs.
Yeah.
Yep.
Getting to jobs. But we're not going to go grocery shopping. Or are we?
No.
Or maybe.
Well, I think it depends who it
People who
is.
don't have transportation.
Seniors.
can't
Need-
do anything, so.
I'll speak up for food.
Right, yeah.
Sorry.
Get a ride together.
Well, if you don't have a bus or you're not on
Okay,
a bus
so
stop.
recreation activities. I mean, where do we draw the line about where a
I
voucher can
think,
be used?
just what you need to live on,
Right.
Yeah,
which might not be recreation.
right. But we do want to make sure people get their appointments, doctor's appointments in
Yep.
general.
Get to the grocery store, the food pantry,
Yep.
So basic needs.
work, childcare.
Yep.
Yep.
What? Do you have something to say?
No, I struggle with this idea that you would, I just don't know. I see the point in doing something like that's very individualized, like a voucher for Uber and Lyft. If somebody picks you up at your house and drops you at the destination you need. I struggle a little bit with the, like sustainability
Right.
of something like that, because, the prices fluctuate a lot, right? Whether or not the voucher would really cover it, who knows? Or how it works, who manages that. versus, do you buy, starting at 50,000, a 15-passenger van? And I get that there's insurance associated with that and stuff, but could you set something up so that you would have, if you buy a new van, hopefully you don't have a ton of maintenance on it, and, do you set something up where it funds the insurance, for how long or whatever, and then you have something that can actually be used by the city into the future. I understand the low-hanging fruit. A lot of times I fear that in a quest for low price, quote, high impact, although who knows how a high impact, you end up picking things that are more of a Band-Aid than a solution. And if you have, however much money, it's very hard to make recommendations when you don't really know how much you have to work with. But
But the other side of that too is that we're making recommendations. Yes, there's a pot of money. That pot of money will get spent on anything that we recommend. So the sustainability piece is in question. But I think that if we say to the council, look, these are things that are really important to the community and to the sustainability of the community. So, the money may run out at some point, but as a city council, you have to give thought to how these things may be sustained beyond this pot of money that exists, because they are really critical to the maintenance, the health of the community. So I think
100%.
there's two pieces there. There's the pot of money that's going to go away with whatever we choose to recommend. And so that's why it's so important for us to say these are the critical pieces that we think are going to have an impact, add to the health of the community, and to kind of lift up our vulnerable populations as much as possible. But the thought of saying, we recommend that you guys give thought to the sustainability of this beyond this pot of money, because for these reasons, and you have them in your presentation.
Well, and I think the idea too, just that the big ideas that we've all come up with, like that's the important part. The important part is we're saying transportation is an issue, right? And it needs to have some thought. So when you're voting on where the money's going, please consider that, And both ideas, I think, are valid. The van idea, and it's kind of above our, but if they voted yes, that'd be great. They send it to the city investigates it, comes back, says it's going to be X amount, and that's way too much. But I think both ideas are good ideas.
With the van suggestion, what you could recommend, and I'm probably speaking a little bit out of turn here, but I believe the rec department has a van or two that
They
uses
do.
at the senior center and they use
Yep.
at the rec department. So a request would be, we want to make sure that the city has enough transportation. Could you ask the rec department if they even have the staff, or if they have, I'm sure they have the need, but do they think with another van, they would be able to utilize it and get their money's worth? And then you're kind of identifying or highlighting an area for us to investigate if we could, because I don't think creating a
Maybe
new
the rec
van
department
process
may,
would work.
so the
but-
rec department may have a couple of vans, but maybe those vans are in need of repair. Maybe there's
I think we do a good job. Peter Rice does a great job keeping everything going.
Oh, okay.
So, but the rec department might say, yeah, we could totally use another van, but it's not in the budget. Or they might say, actually, we have a van that sits all day because we don't have anybody to drive it.
But that's
Right.
the other piece, is the staffing.
Right.
Who would, it's a great van, but who's going to drive it?
But with
You
the
know,
rec-
if we don't have the people to do it
Well,
already.
Yeah, but once you fair enough. And the other thing it seems like when you have the big chunk of money and that's going to go away, that one option is to invest in capital or invest in, like what we were talking about here with scholarships and stuff for childcare providers to go to Great Bay and learn how to do that. And so then you build your workforce on some level, so that down the road, you have that workforce. Down the road, you have that van to use. And I don't know about you guys, but you can get volunteers to drive vans and stuff, but you can't get a volunteer to drive a coast bus necessarily, because it just requires too much. But I think personal opinion, investing in, if childcare is a really important thing, if transportation to mental health appointments is a really big thing, maybe actually the people who need the van are the people like you all, where they're going to their appointments. So you need a van that can go around and help pick it up. So that would be a great use of funds, not for the city to own the van, but for you guys to own a van, and that would be a great use of funds. So just thinking like, you know, we recently had people donate money for us to buy 2 refrigerated box trucks. Huge amount of money, right? We couldn't afford to do it, but we got them. So now all we have to do is pay insurance and some repairs as needed. But it's like that lift so that you can get to that level where all it will cost is the insurance. And
anything that we recommend now would be appropriate to use as a pilot program. So we try to do the high impact would be, okay, we buy this van, we take data on how many people get to their appointments, and does it work? So even though it's temporary money, it's still valuable because we've tried something.
But it's hard to know what the needs are of the nonprofits to get people there without either like a needs assessment like what the public health department is doing, or grant proposals saying this is what we actually need to serve the community coming from the nonprofits. So if you don't do a sort of grant proposal process, you don't necessarily know what, you know, Families First needs or Haven needs to serve that community.
Well, and I think that that's where we've gotten tripped up a little bit in this group, is because just having conversations about these pressing issues, we've come up with lots of ideas of things that could be done, but it's not fitting neatly into this process of what this money is available for and how we can.
And the other thing I would highlight, like with, for instance, like say scholarships for kids. I mean, one of the objectives of this group is, my daughter was in middle school during COVID. She's in high school now, but all those kids lost out on a couple of years of really important development time. So we may only be able to fund these for a couple of years, and then in a couple of years we decide to continue or not. But I think we're in a situation now where we need to kind of like oversaturate with mental health opportunities for kids and for seniors and everyone. And maybe we can only do it for 2 years and then it has to end. But I think the need now is probably greater than it would be in 2 years. So I wouldn't
That's a good
discount doing those short-term things because they're not sustainable, just because we're coming at it, we're trying to recover from a very specific event.
Right.
But I think you can do both. You could add in, you know, there was a lot of talk about vans, and we would like the council to at least ask the question of the rec department, or is there another department in the city that would be able to utilize a van? Because what we've heard over and over and over again is transportation is a very big issue, and it doesn't really seem to be covered by anybody except for Coast. Or I think there's a couple other nonprofits, but they're the big one.
Well, that kind of gets back to what you were saying about if there was a position
Right, like a coordinator,
for,
Right.
you know, like if it was
even
a
if it was
position.
only a couple of years of a position
Right,
that could
that-
look at some of those opportunities for kids.
Yep. Yeah, right, for kids, because I think that we all piecemeal it over at Little Harbor. You know, I'm in the special ed world and the English second language, and we've got kids into some art programs at the rec, and it's amazing now that they have the community campus, and then Zach was able to get busing over there. But it's interesting when you talk about this, like I had a girl last Monday, she had to cancel her art class because her mom's car broke down, and so she didn't have a ride home, and I'm like, oh, I wish we had a bus ride home, you know, but we don't. So she can't go to the class that we got her a scholarship for to go with Todd at the rec department, which is awesome. So just things like that are, just those tricky, that it's like, if there was someone coordinating, you know, a point person, or who can drive the van and drive her home.
who also has the van.
Yeah, you know, right. But if it was a partnership with city, school, Portsmouth Housing, rec, you know.
And you might suggest that. So we have it's a state grant. I believe it's called a housing navigator. And it's a 2-year position, and it's an expert to kind of come in and look at our zoning rules and make suggestions, because zoning is a complex project. So you might say, you know, you might request, you know, maybe there's a temporary city position or a consultant that comes in and evaluates how the city interfaces with all the nonprofits, as well as, you know, the schools and the after-school activities, and make sure that we're not missing anything. Because, I mean, to kind of circle back fully, one of the catalysts for this group is the Sunrise Squad, which you started at Little Harbor, and then probably would have spread to the other 2 elementary schools, but COVID hit and nothing happened. So it was like, okay, how do we make sure that we're not doing Sunrise Squad in one school and not the other 2 schools, because it's such a great program?
Right. Well, and I feel like having a position that would be school town wide, right? Because I think there are a portion of us, like I said, at Little Harbor, that are doing this probably because it's something I'm really passionate about. And so I have people doing this and calling the rec department. I'm talking to Todd. I'm getting scholarships. But that's not equitable that just because that's my hat, that it's not happening at New Franklin and Don Darrow, you know. So, but if you had that position, it would be more equitable, I feel like.
And are they getting them into some of the other programs that exist?
Right, right. And then that's the other thing is not just rec. I mean, that's easy because it's rec, but all the other things that exist that are so amazing.
That would be a great position,
Yeah, right?
and it would have a high impact.
Right. Yep.
And is there something similar for seniors, since that's the other thing that's come up?
I know, that would be another great.
They could do that, too.
No, they couldn't. Let's not overwhelm somebody.
Whole lifespan.
The whole lifespan, just figure it out for everyone.
Yep. Coordinate for all.
I can say that for the senior side, and I've had some conversations with Craig Welch from Portsmouth Housing Authority, that the senior population is presenting some significant challenges, or certainly not specific to seniors, but they are part of that. Really, the population in public housing is presenting some challenges because of the mental health issues, but also because of the disability and underlying health issues that exist, and so that much more so than in the past. I know that and we're confronting those too as a shelter. To your point about, there may be something there that if it doesn't already exist, to look at this more broadly in terms of the needs of the senior population across the board, but certainly those that are living in public housing.
And the disabled
Disabled as well, yeah.
folks, that people with developmental disabilities, I just found out, are maybe going to be capped for Section 8. They might decide that, because right now, according to D at New Hampshire Housing Finance, all the people who are getting at Section 8 vouchers are all disabled. And other people are not getting the Section 8 vouchers. So they may cap how many vouchers can go to people with disabilities.
And so then if you have a disability and you need that voucher too late, you missed the boat.
Yeah, it could be bad. She's thinking next year, maybe.
Wow.
But Councilor Bagley made an important point, and that is that we kind of have to bring it back to the COVID recovery task force, which is what we are as a body, and so if we think about it in those terms. You made a really good point about kind of trying to bring the population back to a normalized point in time, and we need to do a lot of catch-up, particularly with children. So for me, the sweet spot is focusing on mental health and child care. I know that doesn't serve well, to some degree it does, the population that I work with. But if we focus it on recovery, and the money is spent down, and we can get to some point where we're making some progress in that area, then we can say that we will have done our job, right?
But I think it's pointing out that the issues that are at the forefront right now have always been there, and it was COVID that exacerbated those for folks. And
So let's get back to the bad place we were, not the worst place that we were.
Yeah.
Not worse.
so we have 10 minutes, folks, to
Okay.
fine tune what we're.
So are we still thinking that we had talked about seeing if we could present at the May 1st meeting?
Yeah, does that get, I don't,
know how that
because
works. I was
Karen in
looking
an email said that could probably work, but I don't think it was confirmed.
Yeah, as long as we get the agenda in the Wednesday before the council meeting, whatever date works best for you, more or less.
So you would need whatever we would be presenting the Wednesday before?
Yeah, so it can go for like public disclosure laws. It goes in the agenda in the packet. And it could just say verbal report, but you'd want to be on the agenda the Wednesday before May 1st, if that's the council meeting that you wanted to present at.
26, yeah.
So that's a week from tomorrow.
And if you miss that, you can, we have a council meeting every 2 weeks, so.
So in terms of locking it down, in terms of recommendations, I mean, it seems that we're going around and I'm sensing some agreement where, I mean, we're trying to hash this out and talk a little bit about it, but I think that we do have some agreement on some of these things. And so I don't know if we need to go around and take vote on the separate things that we want to say, okay, these are the recommendations, or,
I think we should just say what they are and see if we say yes or no.
okay.
I mean, I think the coordinating for kids to get that seemed like it really gave us all a light bulb.
Yeah.
So that would be one.
And even though transportation isn't one of those big things, I think that the van idea,
Yeah.
or the, you know,
Or at least
some kind of,
researching where we are with vans and.
some kind of transportation fix that would at least act as a pilot to show whether it's helping or not, you know,
Yeah.
the next couple of years.
Can I ask if we want to also, with this coordinator role, recommend a certain amount of money be set aside for scholarships for things that they might find for kids?
Right.
I mean, it seems like you could have somebody looking at it and coordinating, but not be able to take it to the next level if
Right.
they didn't have some money set aside for
Yeah,
that.
no, totally.
Right.
I mean, I'll just read, and you guys all have this in the slideshow, but I've just been taking notes. So the funding to the Community Resource Network to build the website, beef it up so the community can use it. Working with the Recreation Department for scholarships, which is a separate line item than creating and funding a position for a school coordinating community kind of person.
Is that the summer camps, or is that a separate?
Summer camps would be the recreation, scholarships for summer camps. Then
Okay.
creating a position to coordinate services.
And that's for school-age kids.
Yep, youth and family. And then I had kind of put the van idea / transportation think tank, because to acknowledge that we don't have the answers, but we think this is a good idea to investigate. And then a separate one would be the gas and Uber Lyft vouchers and just some after-school programs, health appointments. Partnering with the high school and community colleges for CDL licenses, childcare, providing scholarships. And then just saying the piece we talked about supporting the recommendation from the Department of Health, from Kim, to set aside money to target the needs of the community, the bookmobile idea, and I will clean this all up, of course, but this is just my notes, and then something about investigating services for seniors in Portsmouth Housing Authority type of, and developmentally disabled.
Can I ask a
As ideas.
question about the bookmobile?
Yeah.
And I like books a lot too, especially children's books. So you were on the same page, but I'm just curious, in the larger scope of what we're talking about, where does that fit into our transportation, mental health, workforce shortage, childcare, housing, substance misuse, or is it like a separate recommendation?
I personally would say like mental health, like if you're really thinking
Me
COVID
too.
and kids who didn't read for a couple
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, I think it kind of fits two of those. Now, this is an idea that's been around for a long time. It's just never been funded. But there's a lot of kids that can't go to the library because they don't have transportation.
Transportation,
So
yeah.
if you bring
So
the
it's kind
books
of a
to
combination.
neighborhoods,
Yeah.
then the kids
Okay.
can get to the books
Got it.
without the transportation
I just want to
component.
make sure we're,
Yeah.
like, as we're thinking and
Yeah.
we're presenting these bullet points, where do these things slot in so it keeps it sort of structured?
Yep.
Do we want to throw something in there? I know Will said at the beginning of the meeting about we can't fix the housing piece, but if there was something around education, I know public comment talked about
Yep.
landlord incentive stuff, so we don't have the answer, but is there,
I mean, a recommendation to continue investigating that or continue.
I mean, clearly, the city has to focus on
Yeah,
housing.
and with a focus on affordable or deeply affordable housing, not market rate housing. So this is,
We have plenty of market rate housing, it seems.
So what do we want to do about putting any money price towards any of these things? Amounts, I mean.
I have no idea.
I'm thinking that, now hearing the list, you don't necessarily need to put money to it, because what the council can do is say, all these are great ideas, ask the city manager and staff to report back, and then they're going to come back with actual costs, which are
Right.
better than
That's a good
Yeah.
idea.
rough
Karen told us
costs.
that at one point when we started going way down into the weeds of money, remember? And then she was like, stop, because that's what we do. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I'll let you do that because I have no idea. Is there anything else?
And then just so I understood it correctly, I think we talked a little bit like the housing coordinator / person that would be more or less nonprofit school after-school activities coordinator.
Yep.
And then was there also a second recommendation for a separate person to do seniors and people with accessibility challenges, let's say?
I kind of threw that out there, but I don't know if anybody else
Yeah, no,
agreed with it.
I think
Oh,
so,
possibly,
for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
I like the
that
idea of
should be
presenting
considered.
them as two.
Yep.
And then the city might come back and say one person can do this.
Yep.
But if we just present the one,
Yep.
then it may just be focused on kids and we overlook the seniors or vice versa.
No, and I think the seniors, from Kim's presentation, and I can't remember the woman who came from Portsmouth Housing Authority, like way back in the beginning, talked a lot about isolated seniors and
Right.
mental health and
Yep.
not getting back to where they were.
Dinner for them tonight at Great Bay.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we want to move forward to try to be at the May 1st meeting?
Yeah. I mean, this is here-ish. It just needs to be like,
I would
cleaned
shoot
up.
for May 1st.
and then this is what I would send in, so I can
And
get that
who
done.
would be presenting?
I'll present.
I was going to say.
I'll present.
Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you.
That's great. Do you need a partner, or are you good
What
all
time
on
is
your
that
own?
meeting?
I'm fine
they
on my
start
own.
at
If somebody
7.
wants to partner, I'm, happy to have a
Presentations are usually
partner.
I'll
around
try it if you want
7:30.
to, but
Yeah.
you don't have to.
So we typically have
You can come
non-public
stand there and
before.
add pieces.
I'll stand there.
Well, because I think I want,
Try
we'll
to
just
put
go
the
through the list, but
presentations
some of them need little
They're somewhere between
explanations.
7:30
Yeah.
and 8.
You know what I mean? Just little
Yep.
nuggets, examples. Okay.
Okay, I think we're,
Great.
There's an opportunity.
are we in a good place?
Yes.
Yes, I will get this to Karen by Wednesday so it can go to city council for that meeting.
Okay,
Or
wonderful.
Public, whatever.
Well, thank you, Abby. Appreciate your help with that.
All your
So I
work
should
on
probably
that was
check
really
the calendar
helpful.
as I say. Sure, I'll present Monday, May 1st.
So we're coming up on 1 o'clock. If there's no other folks for public comment, I want to thank the task force members for doing this work. I think it's been, as Council Bagley said, it's been really useful. A lot of good things have come out of it, and I've enjoyed really just sitting at the table with you guys and getting to know you a little bit, and so thank you very much for your volunteer work, and see you down the road.
Yeah.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. We have a second?
Second.
Second. Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.